He was laughed at, ignored, and treated like he didn't matter. But what they didn't know was that the poor man they humiliated was actually a billionaire. And when the truth came out, karma hit harder than anyone expected. Welcome back to my channel. Before we continue with this powerful story, make sure you subscribe, like this video, and share it with someone who loves inspiring stories. And don't forget to comment below and tell me where you're watching from. Your support helps this channel grow and allows me to keep bringing you emotional stories like this one. Now let's continue with the story. Adrian Vale stood alone in his office, high above the city, 57 floors up. From here, everything looked perfect. The skyline stretched endlessly, glowing with ambition. Cars moved like tiny signals of purpose. People rushed through their lives, chasing something: success, survival, meaning. Adrian used to love this view. It reminded him of power, control, proof that he had made it. From a boy who once counted coins to buy food, to a man who could buy entire companies before lunch. A self-made billionaire, founder of Vale Capital, a name that opened doors and closed deals. But today, the view felt different, empty. Behind him, the soft click of the door broke the silence. "Sir." Adrian didn't turn. His assistant, Claire, stepped in carefully, holding a tablet close to her chest. "The quarterly numbers are in," she said. "We've exceeded projections by 18%. She waited. Normally, this would be the moment. The moment Adrian would lean forward, eyes sharp, already asking for breakdowns, next moves, expansion strategies. Instead, nothing, just silence. "Sir?" she repeated gently. Adrian finally spoke, his voice low. "Leave it on the desk." Claire hesitated for a second, confused, but nodded. "Of course." As she placed the tablet down, she studied him briefly. Something was off, but she said nothing, and quietly left the room. Adrian remained still, staring out at the city. 18% growth, a number that should have meant everything. But instead, it meant nothing. After a long moment, he turned slowly and walked toward his desk. The tablet screen lit up as he picked it up. Graphs, revenue spikes, profit margins, all pointing in one direction. "Always up." He set it back down, then whispered, almost to himself, "At what cost?" That question had been following him for weeks now, maybe longer. Started as a thought, a small one, easy to ignore. But thoughts like that don't stay small for long. Later that evening, long after the office had emptied and the building had gone quiet, Adrian sat alone in the dim glow of his desk lamp. The city outside had changed. Fewer cars, softer lights, but his mind was louder than ever. On his laptop screen was something no one else in the company knew about. A report, not prepared by his executives, not filtered through departments. This one came from an independent audit group, one he had secretly hired, because somewhere deep down, he didn't trust the numbers he was being shown anymore. The title sat heavily on the screen. Impact Assessment, Low-Income Borrowers Under Vale Capital Programs. Adrian leaned back in his chair, exhaled slowly. His fingers hovered over the trackpad. Then, he clicked. First, it was just data, charts, percentages, risk models, the language he knew so well. But then, the patterns started forming. Default rates climbing, Repeat borrowing cycles. Increasing. Clients taking new loans just to pay off old ones. Adrian's eyes narrowed. That's not right, he muttered. He scrolled further. And that's when the numbers turned into something else. Stories. Real ones. A single mother juggling 2 jobs, still falling behind. A construction worker injured on the job, trapped in a cycle of repayments. A young couple trying to stay afloat, drowning in late fees. Adrian stopped scrolling. His jaw tightened. He leaned forward, elbows on the desk, reading slower now, carefully, because something inside him didn't want to believe what he was seeing. Then he saw the line, the one that refused to let him look away. Many borrowers report feeling misled or pressured into accepting terms they did not fully understand. Adrian froze. The room felt smaller, quieter. "No," he whispered. "That's not how we built this." Years ago, Vale Capital had a different purpose. He remembered it clearly, sitting in a small office, sketching ideas on paper, talking about access, about giving people a chance, about building something that actually helped. Not this, never this. His eyes drifted to one of the attached profiles. A photograph. A woman, early 30s, tired but strong. There was something in her eyes. Not defeat. Not yet. Her name sat just below the image. Maya Thompson. 3 loans. All active. Struggling. Still trying. Adrian stared at the screen longer than he should have. Because for the first time, this wasn't just data. It was a person. The next morning, the boardroom was filled. 12 executives. Confident. Composed. Ready. The atmosphere was light, almost celebratory. Because to them, things were going perfectly. Marcus Hale, the COO, leaned back in his chair with a satisfied smile. "We're outperforming every competitor in the market," he said. "This is exactly where we want to be." Murmurs of agreement followed. Adrian said nothing. Instead, he placed a printed copy of the report on the table. "Read page 17. The room shifted slightly. Pages flipped. I scanned. And then, a quiet chuckle. Marcus looked up. "Adrian, with all due respect, this is exaggerated." Adrian's expression didn't change. "Exaggerated. It's an external group," another executive added. "They don't understand our models. High-risk clients come with high default rates," someone else said. "That's the business." Adrian leaned forward slightly. "And the fees?" he asked. "The compounding penalties?" A shrug. "Industry standard." "And the clients who say they didn't understand what they signed?" Another pause. Then, "They signed. Simple. Cold. Final." That was the moment. Not the report. Not the numbers. But the detachment. The lack of care. Adrian looked around the room. At people he had built this company with. Trusted. Respected. And suddenly, didn't recognize. "When did we stop seeing them as people?" he asked quietly. No one answered, because to them, it didn't matter. The system was working. Profits were rising. And that was enough. Adrian stood. Slowly. Meeting adjourned. "Adrian," Marcus started. But Adrian was already walking away. That night, the penthouse felt colder than usual. Floor-to-ceiling windows. A view worth millions. And yet, it felt empty. Adrian sat alone, the report spread out in front of him. Beside it, the photo. Maya. He picked it up, studied it again. For you, he said softly. This isn't business. It's survival. He stood and walked toward the window. The city stretched endlessly before him. So many lives, so many stories. How many of them had been affected by decisions made in rooms like his? Decisions made by people who never had to feel the consequences. Adrian closed his eyes briefly, then opened them, and something had changed. The hesitation was gone. The doubt replaced by something stronger. If he wanted the truth, he couldn't read about it. He couldn't hear filtered versions of it. He had to live it. By midnight, the decision was made. No announcements, no discussions, no safety net. He would disappear, not as Adrian Vale, but as someone else, someone invisible. No wealth, no power, no identity anyone would recognize. For 1 year, he would live as a poor man. Adrian reached for his phone, paused, then powered it off. The screen went black. And just like that, so did his old life. For the first time in years, Adrian Vale was about to become nobody. The first thing Adrian Vale lost wasn't his money. It was his identity. By the time the sun rose the next morning, Adrian Vale no longer existed. Not on paper, not in the world, not even in the mirrors he avoided looking into. In his place was a man named Daniel Reed, a name simple enough to be ignored, a name no one would question. He stood in front of a small, cracked mirror in a dim motel bathroom on the edge of the city, staring at the reflection looking back at him. Unshaven, tired, ordinary. He had cut his hair shorter, roughened his appearance, traded tailored suits for cheap, worn clothes that didn't quite fit right. For the first time in years, no one would recognize him. Daniel now took a slow breath. This was it. No assistants waiting outside. No driver downstairs. No safety net hidden behind a phone call. Just him. And whatever the world decided to give him. He stepped out into the morning air with a backpack slung over his shoulder. The city didn't greet him. It didn't pause. It didn't care. People walked past him like he was already part of the background. That was new. Adrian had spent years being noticed. Now he was invisible. The bus ride into the lower-income district was quiet, but not peaceful. The kind of quiet filled with exhaustion. People sat with slouched shoulders, worn expressions, eyes fixed on nothing. A woman clutched her bag tightly, her fingers tense. A man in work boots leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor like he was already tired of a day that hadn't started. No one spoke. No one smiled. Adrian stood near the back, gripping the rail as the bus jerked forward. At one point, someone brushed past him roughly. No apology. No acknowledgement. He looked around instinctively, waiting for someone to notice. No one did. He wasn't Adrian Vale anymore. He was just another man taking up space. When he stepped off the bus, the difference was immediate. The air felt heavier here. Buildings looked older, worn down by time and neglect. Paint peeled from the walls. Windows were patched instead of replaced. Small stores lined the street, most of them half empty, some with signs that read, "Closing soon." Adrian took it all in slowly. This wasn't the version of struggle he had seen in reports. This was real. This was constant. The first thing he needed was a place to stay. That's what he told himself. Start simple. Find a room. Stabilize. then figure out the rest. But even that was harder than he expected. The first building he approached had a faded "Rooms Available" sign hanging loosely by one corner. He knocked. A man opened the door just enough to look at him. "Yeah, I'm looking for a room," Adrian said. The man's eyes scanned him quickly. "What do you do?" "I'm between jobs right now, but I can." "No job, no room." The door shut. Just like that. Adrian stood there for a moment, processing what had just happened. No discussion. No negotiation. No second chance. He moved on. The second place wasn't much better. This time, the landlord opened the door wider. A woman. Older. Sharp eyes. "References?" she asked immediately. "I just moved here," Adrian replied. "I don't have. No references, no rent. But I can pay up front." "Doesn't matter." Another door. Another rejection. By the third attempt, something had shifted inside him. Not frustration. Something deeper. Quiet realization. This wasn't about money. This was about trust. And without status, without a name that meant something, he had none. By late afternoon, hunger began to settle in. Real hunger. Not the kind he used to ignore between meetings. This was different. Heavy. Persistent. It slowed his thoughts. Made everything feel just a little harder. He walked into a small convenience store, the bell above the door chiming softly. The smell of cheap coffee and packaged food filled the air. He wandered through the aisles slowly, picking up items, checking prices, putting them back. Everything felt expensive now. Too expensive. He finally grabbed a sandwich, stood there for a moment, then checked the price again. Too much. He placed it back carefully. That simple act hit harder than he expected. That's when he noticed her, standing at the counter, counting coins, slowly, carefully, like every single one mattered. "Sorry," she said softly to the cashier. "I'm a little short." The cashier barely looked at her. "Then take something off." She hesitated, looked down at the few items in front of her. Bread, eggs, milk, basic things, necessary things. After a moment, she reached out and gently pushed the milk aside. "I'll just take these," she said. There was no anger in her voice, no complaint, just acceptance. Something in Adrian tightened. Before he could think it through, he stepped forward. "I'll cover it." Both of them looked at him. The cashier raised an eyebrow. She turned, surprised. "You don't have to do that," she said quickly. "It's fine," Adrian replied, placing the money down. The cashier shrugged and completed the transaction. She picked up her bag slowly, still unsure, then looked at Adrian properly. Not dismissing him, not judging him, just seeing him. "Thank you," she said. There was something genuine in her voice, something he hadn't heard in a long time. "It's nothing," Adrian said, but he knew it wasn't. Not here. Outside, she caught up with him. "Hey," she said. "Wait." Adrian turned. "I'm Maya." The name hit him instantly. Maya Thompson. The same name from the report. The same face from the photograph. For a brief second, everything around him faded. But she didn't recognize him. To her, he was just a stranger. "Daniel," he said. She smiled slightly. "Well, Daniel, thank you." "Really?" He nodded. They started walking in the same direction. Maya spoke easily, not oversharing, not guarded, just honest. "Things have been a bit tight lately," she said. "Work hours got cut." Adrian listened, not as a CEO, not analyzing, just listening. "I'm trying to pick up extra shifts, but it's not easy," she added. He glanced at her. "You'll figure it out." She gave a small smile. "Yeah, I always do." There was strength in that, quiet strength. After a few steps, she looked at him. "Do you have a place to stay?" Adrian hesitated. "Not yet." She nodded slowly, thinking. "There's a building not far from here," she said. "The landlord's difficult, but if you talk to him right, you might get a room." Adrian studied her. "Why are you helping me?" Maya shrugged. "Because I know what it feels like when no one does." Simple. No hesitation. No expectation. That stayed with him. Because in a world where doors had been closing all day, she opened one. Later that evening, after following her directions and trying again, this time with a different approach, Adrian finally managed to secure a small room. It wasn't much. A thin mattress, a flickering light, walls that carried every sound from the hallway. But it was something. And for now, it was enough. He sat on the edge of the bed, looking around. The silence returned, but it felt different now. He leaned back slowly, staring at the ceiling. Cracks ran across it like quiet reminders of time and pressure. In just one day, everything had changed. The way people looked at him, the way they spoke to him, the way they dismissed him, or ignored him completely. This was the world, without power, without money, without a name that mattered. But in the middle of it all, there was Maya, a stranger who didn't know who he was, didn't care, and still chose kindness. Across the building, Maya placed her groceries on a small kitchen counter, unaware that the man she had just helped was the same man behind the system making her life harder. Back in his room, Adrian closed his eyes. But sleep didn't come easily, because now, this wasn't just an experiment. It wasn't just curiosity. It was something deeper, something personal. And somewhere inside Adrian Vale, a quiet shift had begun. Not just to understand the system, but to confront it. By the third morning, Adrian Vale had learned something no report could ever teach him. Survival was exhausting, not physically at first, but mentally. Every decision carried weight. Every dollar mattered. Every interaction felt like a test he didn't know how to pass. He woke up to noise, voices through the walls, footsteps in the hallway, a door slamming somewhere down the corridor. The thin mattress beneath him had done little to ease the tension in his body. For a moment he lay still, staring at the ceiling, trying to remember what day it was. Then it hit him. There was no schedule, no meetings, no structure, just one goal: find a way to get through the day. Hunger came back quickly, stronger this time. Adrian sat up slowly, reaching into his bag. He counted what was left of his money. Not much, less than he expected. He exhaled quietly. "This won't last," he murmured, which meant one thing. He needed a job. The idea felt strange, not because he had never worked before, but because for years he had been the one giving opportunities, not asking for them. Now, he had to prove himself, and he had nothing to prove with. No resume that matched his current identity. No references. No story that anyone would believe. Just a name, Daniel Reed, and hope that it would be enough. The first place he tried was a small cafe down the street. The smell of coffee filled the air as he stepped inside. A bell chimed above the door. A young woman behind the counter glanced at him briefly. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for work," Adrian said. She pointed toward the back. "Talk to the manager." The manager barely looked up. "You got experience?" Adrian paused. He could have listed years of leadership, strategy, decision-making. But none of that mattered here. "I can learn quickly," he said instead. The manager shook his head. "Not what I asked." Adrian held his ground. "I don't have formal experience in this, but I'm willing to work hard." The manager finally looked at him properly, studied him for a second, then sighed. "I need someone who knows what they're doing." Rejection. Simple. Final. The second place was a grocery store. The conversation lasted less than a minute. "We're not hiring." The third place. A construction site. "Experience." "No." Then no. By midday, Adrian felt something he hadn't felt in years. Helplessness. Not the kind you solve with money or influence. This kind didn't listen to power. He sat on a bench near the sidewalk, watching people pass by, each of them moving with purpose, or at least pretending to. A man walked past talking loudly on the phone about bills. A woman rushed by, checking her watch repeatedly. Everyone seemed to be carrying something. Pressure, stress, responsibility. Adrian leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and for the first time, he understood. Rough day. The voice pulled him out of his thoughts. He looked up. Maya, holding a small paper bag. He hadn't even noticed her approach. "Something like that," he said. She sat beside him, opened the bag and handed him half a sandwich. "I figured you might need this." Adrian hesitated. "I can't take that." She raised an eyebrow. "You bought me groceries yesterday. That was different." "No," she said simply. "It wasn't." She placed the sandwich in his hand. And this time, he didn't argue. They sat there quietly for a moment, eating, watching the world move around them. "You find anything?" she asked. Adrian shook his head. "Not yet." She nodded like she expected that answer. "It's not easy," she said, "especially without experience or connections." Connections. The word lingered, because Adrian had built his entire life on them. And now, he had none. Maya leaned back slightly. "I work at a diner a few blocks from here," she said. "We might need someone to help out." Adrian looked at her. "Really? It's not much," she added. "Long hours. Not great pay." "That's fine." She smiled faintly. "Come by tomorrow morning. I'll talk to my manager." That small moment felt bigger than it should have, because after a day filled with closed doors, one had finally opened. The next morning, Adrian arrived early. Too early. He stood outside the diner, watching through the window as Maya moved quickly between tables. Focused, efficient, carrying more than just orders, carrying responsibility. When he stepped inside, the atmosphere hit him immediately. Noise, plates clattering, voices overlapping, orders being called out. It was chaotic, but controlled. Maya spotted him and gave a small nod. "Wait here," she said. A few minutes later, a man in his late 40s approached. Broad shoulders, serious expression. "You're the one Maya mentioned?" "Yes." "You worked in a place like this before?" Adrian met his gaze. No. The man studied him, then glanced toward Maya briefly. She says you're reliable. Adrian didn't respond, because he wasn't sure what reliable looked like here. The man sighed. I need someone to wash dishes and help with cleanup, he said. It's not glamorous. That's fine. You show up late, you're gone. You don't work hard, you're gone. Simple. Adrian nodded. Understood. Start today. And just like that, Adrian Vale got his first job. The work was harder than he expected. Not intellectually, physically. His hands weren't used to it. Constant motion. Hot water. Heavy trays. No breaks long enough to recover. Within an hour, his back ached. Within 2, his hands felt raw. But he didn't stop. He couldn't. Because here, effort was the only thing he had. At one point, a stack of plates slipped from his grip, crashing loudly onto the floor. The room went quiet for a split second. Then, "What are you doing?" the manager snapped. Adrian bent down quickly. "I'm sorry, Be careful," the man cut in sharply. "We don't have money to waste like that." The words hit harder than they should have. Because Adrian knew, once upon a time, he was the reason places like this struggled to stay afloat. Later, as the shift slowed, Maya walked over. "You're still standing," she said lightly. "Barely," Adrian replied. She smiled. "You'll get used to it." As the day came to an end, Adrian stepped outside. The air felt cooler, lighter, but his body felt heavy, exhausted. He looked down at his hands. Red, worn, different. Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out his first earnings. Small, but real. For the first time in years, money meant something again. Not power, not status, but survival. Across the street, a group of well-dressed men walked past the diner, laughing, talking loudly. One of them glanced briefly in Adrian's direction, then looked away, like he didn't matter. Adrian watched them go, and something inside him shifted again, because now he had seen both sides, the world of power, and the world beneath it, and the distance between them was greater than he ever imagined. That night, as he lay in his small room, staring at the ceiling, one thought echoed clearly in his mind. This system was broken, and for the first time, he wasn't just observing it, he was living it. By the end of his first week, Adrian Vale no longer thought of this as an experiment. It wasn't something he could step in and out of. It wasn't something he could observe from a distance. This was his reality now, and it was heavier than he ever imagined. The days blurred together. Wake up, work, eat if he could, sleep, repeat. There was no room for long-term thinking, no space to plan. Everything revolved around one question. How do I make it through today? The diner became his world. The constant noise, the pressure, the pace. At first, Adrian struggled to keep up. Orders moved too fast. Expectations were unspoken but clear. Mistakes weren't tolerated. They were punished, not always loudly, but enough to remind him where he stood. One afternoon, during a busy lunch rush, it happened again. A tray slipped, not completely, but enough for a glass to tip over, spilling water across a customer's table. The man jumped up immediately. "Are you serious?" he snapped. Adrian grabbed a cloth quickly. "I'm sorry. I'll clean it. This is ridiculous." The man continued, loud enough for others to hear. Do you people even know what you're doing? The words hung in the air. You people. Adrian paused for just a second. Not because of the mistake, but because of the tone, the dismissal, the assumption. I said I'll fix it, Adrian replied, keeping his voice steady. The man scoffed. Maybe you should get someone who actually knows how to do their job. A few customers glanced over, some curious, some indifferent. No one stepped in. The manager approached quickly. What's going on? He spilled water all over me, the man said. The manager turned to Adrian. What did I tell you about being careful? Adrian opened his mouth to respond, then stopped, because suddenly he understood something. It didn't matter what he said. The outcome had already been decided. I'll clean it, Adrian said quietly. The manager shook his head. Just do your job. Adrian cleaned the table in silence. The man sat back down, still muttering under his breath. And just like that, the moment passed, but something stayed. Not anger, not embarrassment, something deeper, a realization. This wasn't just about making mistakes. It was about how quickly people assumed the worst, how easily they looked down on you, how little it took for someone to decide your worth. Later that evening, Adrian stepped outside during a short break. He leaned against the wall, exhaling slowly. The noise of the diner still echoed in his ears. Maya joined him a moment later. Tough crowd today, she said. Adrian let out a quiet breath. I didn't even do anything that bad. Maya gave a small, knowing smile. Sometimes it's not about what you did. He looked at her. Then what is it about? She shrugged slightly. How people see you. That stayed with him. Because she was right. It wasn't about the water, or the mistake. It was about perception. And without status, without power, people saw you differently. A few days later, Adrian noticed something else. Something he hadn't paid attention to before. Maya was always tired. Not just physically. There was something behind it. A weight she carried quietly. One evening after their shift ended, they walked together again. This time, the conversation was slower, heavier. You okay? Adrian asked. Maya hesitated, then smiled faintly. I will be. That wasn't an answer. They stopped near her building. Adrian turned to her. You don't have to pretend, he said gently. Maya looked at him, really looked this time, as if deciding whether to say something. Then, it's just bills, she admitted. They keep piling up. Adrian's chest tightened slightly. What kind of bills? She exhaled slowly. Loans. The word hit harder than anything else. 3 of them, she continued. I thought I could manage it at first, but the payments keep increasing. Adrian felt a shift inside him. Why are they increasing? Late fees, she said. Penalties. Every time I fall behind, it just gets worse. He already knew the answer, but hearing it from her was different. Who's the lender? He asked quietly. Maya hesitated, then said the name. Vale Capital. The world seemed to pause, just for a second. Adrian didn't react. He couldn't. Not outwardly. But inside, everything collided. Because this wasn't just data anymore. This wasn't just a report. This was her life. And he was the reason it was falling apart. Maya continued, unaware of the storm building inside him. I didn't understand everything when I signed, she said. I just needed help at the time. Adrian looked away briefly. And now, she gave a small, tired laugh. Now it feels like I'm just trying to keep up with something I'll never catch. Silence settled between them. Heavy, uncomfortable, real. Adrian's mind raced. Every decision, every policy, every system he had approved, all of it led here, to this moment, to her. I'm sorry, he said suddenly. Maya looked at him, confused. For what? Adrian paused, searching for something that made sense. For everything you're dealing with. She softened slightly. It's not your fault. But it was. He knew it, even if she didn't. That night, Adrian couldn't sleep. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the wall. Maya's words replayed over and over in his mind. It feels like I'm just trying to keep up with something I'll never catch. That wasn't just frustration. That was entrapment. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the small amount of money he had left, looked at it, then shook his head. This wasn't something money could fix. Not like this, because the problem wasn't one person. It was the system. And for the first time, Adrian felt something close to anger. Not at Maya, not at the people struggling, but at himself, at what he had allowed his company to become. Across the building, Maya sat at her small table, going through her bills. Numbers written in red, deadlines circled, amounts that didn't make sense anymore. She closed her eyes briefly, then whispered to herself, I'll figure it out. Back in his room, Adrian stood slowly, walked to the small window, looked out at the dark street below. This city he once controlled now felt completely different, because now he could see it, not from above, but from within. And the truth was clear. This wasn't just a flawed system. It was a trap. And the worst part, the people caught in it, trusted it, believed in it, just like Maya did. Adrian clenched his jaw slightly, because now, this wasn't just about understanding anymore. It wasn't just about observation. It was personal. And somewhere deep inside Adrian Vale, a decision was forming, one that would change everything. By the second week, Adrian Vale understood something that unsettled him more than anything else. Power was useless without access to it. And right now, he had none. Every morning he woke up with the same thought. Maya is drowning, and I built the system pulling her under. It wasn't just guilt anymore. It was urgency, a quiet, constant pressure that followed him everywhere. At work, on the streets, even in the silence of his small room at night, he began paying closer attention, not just to Maya, but to everything. Customers at the diner talking about overdue bills. A man arguing on the phone about interest rates. A woman quietly crying in the corner after checking her balance. It was everywhere. Not isolated. Not rare. Pattern. And for the first time, Adrian wasn't looking at it from a distance. He was inside it. One evening, after closing, Maya sat across from him in a small booth. Her energy was different, lower, drained. You okay? Adrian asked. She forced a small smile. Just tired. He didn't believe it. You've been saying that a lot. She looked down at her hands, quiet for a moment. Then, I got another notice today, she admitted. Adrian's chest tightened. What kind of notice? Maya hesitated, then pulled a folded paper from her bag, placed it on the table. Adrian picked it up slowly. His eyes scanned the page. Late payment warning. Penalty added. Final notice approaching. The numbers didn't make sense. Not for someone already struggling. They said if I miss another payment, she began, her voice softer now, they could escalate it. Adrian looked up. What does that mean? She gave a small, defeated shrug. I don't know, but it doesn't sound good. He folded the paper carefully, placed it back on the table, and for a moment, he forgot who he was pretending to be. Have you tried calling them? He asked. Maya let out a quiet laugh. Of course I have. And they don't really help, she said. They just repeat the same thing, terms, policies, deadlines. Adrian looked away briefly, because he knew exactly what she meant. He had written those policies, approved those scripts, built a system where empathy had no place. I just need a little more time, Maya said. That's all. Adrian nodded slowly, but inside, he knew the truth. The system didn't give time, took advantage of it. That night, Adrian couldn't sit still. He paced his small room back and forth, thinking, calculating, searching for a way out. There had to be something he could do, something small, something that didn't break his cover. The next day he tried. He walked into a loan office across town. Not Vale Capital. Competitor. If he couldn't fix the system directly, maybe he could work around it. A woman behind the desk looked up as he approached. I'd like to apply for a loan, Adrian said. She nodded. Fill this out. He took the form, sat down, started writing. Name, Daniel Reed. Employment, diner worker. Income minimal. As he filled in each section, he already knew how this would end. Still, he handed it back. The woman reviewed it quickly, then looked at him. You don't qualify. Just like that. No explanation. No alternative. No solution. Adrian leaned forward slightly. I just need a small amount. Short term. She shook her head. You don't meet the requirements. Is there anything I can do? No. The conversation ended before it even began. Back outside, Adrian stood still for a moment, letting it sink in. This was the reality, not just for Maya, but for anyone in her position. No access, no options, no way out. Later that day at the diner, the pressure built again. It was busy, louder than usual, customers impatient, orders piling up. Adrian moved quickly, trying to keep up. But his mind wasn't focused, kept drifting back to Maya, to the notice, to the system he couldn't seem to break. Then it happened. A customer called him over sharply. Hey, I've been waiting. I'll be right with you, Adrian said. I've been hearing that for 10 minutes, the man snapped. Adrian stepped closer. I'm sorry, we're a bit understaffed. That's not my problem, the man interrupted. Do your job. The tone, the entitlement, the complete lack of patience. Adrian felt something rise in him. Not anger, not yet, but something close. I said I'm handling it, Adrian replied, his voice tighter now. The man leaned back slightly. Oh, we've got attitude now? A few people turned to look. The attention shifted. The manager appeared almost instantly. What's going on? He's arguing with me, the customer said. Adrian opened his mouth, but stopped, because he already knew. The manager turned to him. Apologize. Adrian stood still. For a brief second, his instincts kicked in. The version of him that commanded rooms. That didn't tolerate disrespect. That didn't answer to anyone. But that version of him didn't exist here. I'm sorry, Adrian said. The words felt heavier than they should have. The customer scoffed. Yeah, you should be. The moment passed, but the weight of it didn't. Later, in the back room, the manager shook his head. You need to keep your attitude in check, he said. Adrian said nothing, because there was nothing to say. He stepped outside again. The same wall, the same spot, but everything felt different now. Maya joined him a few minutes later. You okay? She asked. Adrian let out a slow breath. Do you ever get tired of it? Tired of what? People, he said. The way they treat you. Maya was quiet for a moment. Then, sometimes, she admitted. Then why do you keep going? She looked at him and smiled. Not a big smile, but a real one. Because I don't have a choice. That answer stayed with him. Because it was the truth. Not everyone had the luxury of walking away, of starting over, of choosing a different path. Some people were just trying to survive the one they were given. That night, Adrian sat on his bed, staring at the small amount of money he had earned. Then at Maya's notice, which she had accidentally left behind. He picked it up, read it again, every word, every number, every consequence. He clenched his jaw slightly, because for the first time, he felt trapped too. A billionaire who couldn't help the one person he wanted to protect. And that realization hit harder than anything else. Because now, this wasn't just about fixing a system. It was about saving someone. And he was running out of time. By the third week, the pressure was no longer building. It was closing in. Adrian could feel it in everything. In the way Maya moved. Slower now, more distracted. In the way she checked her phone, then quickly put it away. In the way her smile came less often, and when it did, it didn't quite reach her eyes. Something had changed, and this time, she couldn't hide it. The diner was quieter than usual that morning. Not empty, just heavy, like the air itself knew something was coming. Adrian worked in silence, moving between tasks with practiced rhythm. But his attention wasn't on the work. It was on Maya. She missed an order. Twice. That wasn't like her. The manager noticed. You okay? He asked sharply. I'm fine, Maya replied quickly. But she wasn't. Everyone could see it. Later, during a short break, Adrian found her sitting alone behind the building. Her phone rested in her hand. The screen still lit. A message open. She didn't notice him at first. Hey, Adrian said gently. She looked up quickly, almost startled. Oh, hey. He nodded toward the phone. Bad news. Maya hesitated, then locked the screen. It's nothing. Adrian didn't move, didn't speak, just waited. After a moment, her shoulders dropped slightly. It's not nothing, she admitted quietly. She handed him the phone. Adrian looked down. A message. Short, direct, cold. Final notice. Failure to remit payment will result in escalation to collections and possible legal action. Adrian's grip tightened slightly. When did you get this? He asked. This morning, she said. He looked up. And, she forced a small laugh. And I don't have it. The simplicity of her answer made it worse. "How much?" Adrian asked. Maya shook her head. "It doesn't matter." "It does." She hesitated, then finally said it. "The number." Adrian went still, not because it was impossible, but because it was so small compared to what he used to spend without thinking. And yet here, it might as well have been everything. "I can figure something out," Maya said quickly, like she needed to convince herself. "I'll pick up more shifts, maybe borrow from someone." "From who?" Adrian asked more sharply than he intended. She stopped, because she didn't have an answer. Silence settled between them again. But this time, it was heavier. "Maybe I can talk to them again," she said finally. Adrian exhaled slowly. "You said that didn't work." "It has to work," she replied, her voice quieter now. "I don't have another option." That word again. No option. That evening Adrian couldn't shake it. The message, the amount, the timeline. He walked through the streets longer than usual after his shift ended. Watching, thinking, trying to find something, anything. There had to be a way. There had to be a gap in the system. A weakness, a workaround. But every path he considered led to the same place. Dead end. Because the system wasn't designed to help people like Maya. It was designed to keep them inside it. The next day, things got worse. Maya didn't show up for the morning shift. That alone was enough to raise concern. She had never missed a shift. Not once. By midday, Adrian couldn't focus anymore. He kept checking the door, waiting, but she didn't come. Finally, he couldn't take it. After his shift ended, he went straight to her building. The hallway was quiet, too quiet. He knocked. No answer. He knocked again, harder this time. Still nothing. Just as he was about to leave, he heard footsteps behind him. A neighbor, older woman, watching him carefully. "You looking for Maya?" she asked. Adrian turned quickly. "Yes." The woman sighed. "They came earlier." Adrian's chest tightened. "Who?" "Collection agents," she said. "Or something like that." The words hit instantly. "Where is she?" Adrian asked. The woman shook her head. "She left." Looked shaken. Adrian didn't wait. He turned and rushed down the stairs, out into the street. His eyes scanned everything, every direction, every corner. And then he saw her, sitting on a bench across the street. Still, too still. He approached slowly. "Maya." She didn't look up at first. Then, "I tried," she said. Her voice was flat, distant. Adrian sat beside her. "What happened?" She let out a breath that sounded like it had been building all day. "I called them," she said. "I explained everything. And they didn't care." Adrian clenched his jaw. "They said if I don't pay by tomorrow, they'll escalate it," she continued. "Escalate how?" he asked. Maya laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. "I don't know, but it didn't sound like something I can handle." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she said something that stopped him completely. "I wish I never took that loan." Adrian felt it. Deep, sharp, unavoidable. Because that decision had her name on it. But the system behind it had his. "I thought it would help," she continued. "Just something small to get me through." She looked down at her hands. "But now it feels like it's the thing pulling me under." Adrian turned slightly toward her. And for the first time, he didn't know what to say, because there was nothing he could say. Not as Daniel. Not without breaking everything. "I'll figure it out," Maya whispered again. But this time, it didn't sound like belief. It sounded like hope running out. That was the moment. The moment Adrian Vale broke. Not visibly, not loudly, but internally, completely, because he realized something he couldn't ignore anymore. He wasn't just watching this happen. He was letting it happen. And suddenly, doing nothing felt worse than breaking his own rules. That night, Adrian didn't go back to his room. He walked, for hours, through streets he had never truly seen before. Everywhere he looked, he saw it. The system, the pressure, the quiet desperation people carried. And at the center of it all, his company, his name, his decisions. He stopped walking, stood still, in the middle of the street. And for the first time since this began, the question wasn't what should I do? It was, how far am I willing to go to fix this? Because helping Maya would change everything. It would expose him, end the experiment, shatter the illusion he had built. But letting her fall was no longer an option. Adrian closed his eyes briefly, then opened them. And this time, there was no hesitation. That night, Adrian Vale didn't sleep. Not because he couldn't, but because he wouldn't. He sat on the edge of his bed, the darkness of the room pressing in around him. Maya's voice echoed in his mind. "I wish I never took that loan." It replayed over and over again, each time heavier than the last. He had come here to observe, to understand, to gather truth. But now, truth wasn't enough, because the system he built was about to break someone he cared about. Adrian stood slowly, walked to the small window, looked out at the quiet street below. And for the first time since this began, he made a decision not as Daniel, but as Adrian Vale. This ends now. The next morning, everything felt different. Not on the surface. The diner was still busy. People still rushed in and out. Orders still piled up. But inside Adrian, something had shifted. There was clarity now, purpose, and a line he was no longer willing to stay behind. He worked his shift like usual, silent, focused, but his mind was elsewhere, planning, calculating, rebuilding access to a world he had deliberately cut himself off from. Because if he was going to fix this, he needed to step back into it, carefully, quietly, without destroying everything too soon. That evening, Adrian left the diner early. For the first time since he had arrived, he walked for nearly an hour, through streets that slowly began to change. Buildings cleaner, lights brighter, the air itself felt different, until finally, he stopped, across the street from a building he knew very well. Glass exterior, polished entrance, security at the door, Vale Capital. For a moment he just stood there, watching, as employees walked in and out, confident, composed, unaware. A week ago, that building was his. Now, felt like a different world. Adrian crossed the street, approached the entrance. The security guard stepped forward immediately. "Can I help you?" Adrian met his gaze. "I need to speak to someone inside." The guard glanced at his clothes, his appearance, then shook his head. "Employees only." Adrian paused, just for a second, because he had walked through those doors hundreds of times without question. Now, He couldn't even get past the front. "I used to work here," Adrian said. The guard didn't react. "Not anymore," he replied simply. And just like that, the door stayed closed. Adrian stepped back. Not angry, not surprised, just aware. This was the reality he had built. Access wasn't about truth. It was about appearance, status, position. He turned and walked away. But this time, he wasn't leaving. He found a quiet spot nearby, sat down, and pulled out something he had avoided using since this began. A hidden phone, one he had kept for emergencies, one connected to a part of his life he had tried to walk away from. His thumb hovered over the screen. For a moment he hesitated, because once he crossed this line, there was no going back. Then he unlocked it. The phone lit up instantly. Dozens of notifications, missed calls, messages. His absence hadn't gone unnoticed. He ignored all of it, scrolled, until he found one name, Marcus Hale, his CO, the man who had dismissed the report. Adrian pressed call. It rang once, twice, then, "Hello," Marcus's voice, sharp, alert. Adrian didn't speak immediately. He listened, because hearing that voice again pulled him back into a world he had tried to leave behind. "Who is this?" Marcus asked. Adrian exhaled slowly. "It's me." Silence. Then, "Adrian." The shift in Marcus's tone was instant. Confusion, relief, then something else. Concern. "Where have you been?" Marcus continued. "Do you have any idea what's been happening here?" Adrian's expression hardened slightly. "I'm not calling about that." Another pause. "I need information," Adrian said. Marcus's voice changed again. Careful now. "What kind of information?" "Borrower accounts," Adrian replied. "Specifically, escalation processes." Marcus hesitated. "That's not something we discuss over the phone." Marcus. The name alone carried weight. Even now. Another silence. Then, "What's going on?" Marcus asked. Adrian's grip on the phone tightened. "What's going on?" he said slowly. "Is that people are being pushed into situations they can't recover from." Marcus let out a breath. "We've been through this," he said. "You're overthinking it." Adrian's jaw clenched. "No," he replied quietly. "I'm finally seeing it." The line went quiet. Then Marcus spoke again, lower this time. "You left," he said. "You walked away from this company." "And you stayed," Adrian replied. Another pause. "I need access to one account," Adrian said. "That's it." Marcus didn't respond immediately. "That's not how this works anymore," he said finally. That was new. Adrian's eyes narrowed slightly. "What do you mean?" Marcus hesitated. Then, "There have been changes since you left. A shift. Subtle, but important." "What kind of changes?" Adrian asked. Marcus exhaled. "Stricter enforcement," he said. "More aggressive recovery strategies." Adrian's chest tightened. "How aggressive?" Marcus didn't answer directly, and that told Adrian everything he needed to know. "You pushed it further," Adrian said quietly. Marcus didn't deny it. "Adrian," he said instead, "this is the direction the market is going." The words hit hard, because they sounded familiar, like something Adrian himself might have said once. "Send me the details," Adrian said. "I can't." Marcus replied immediately. Of course he couldn't, or wouldn't. The call ended shortly after. Not with resolution, but with something else. Clarity. Adrian lowered the phone slowly, his mind racing. The system hadn't just continued without him. It had evolved, become sharper, more efficient, more ruthless, and Maya was caught right in the middle of it. That night, Adrian returned to his room, but he wasn't the same man who had left it. He sat down, pulled out Maya's notice again, read it carefully, line by line. Then he looked at the date. Tomorrow. Time had run out. Across the building, Maya sat in silence, her phone on the table, bills spread out in front of her. She stared at them for a long time. Then slowly, she began packing a small bag. Not everything, just the essentials, because deep down, she already knew. And somewhere across the hall, Adrian Vale sat in the dark, holding the truth in his hands, and preparing to do the one thing he had tried to avoid since this began: reveal himself. Morning came too quickly. For Maya, it didn't feel like a new day, felt like a deadline. The room was quiet as she zipped up her small bag. Not everything, just what she could carry. Clothes, a few personal items, the essentials. She paused for a moment, looking around the room, the walls she had lived within, the space she had tried to hold together. Then she exhaled slowly and picked up her phone. No missed calls, no solutions, just the same message staring back at her. Final notice. Across the hall, Adrian stood still. He hadn't slept, not even for a minute. He had spent the entire night thinking, replaying every option, every possible move, every consequence. There was no perfect solution, no clean way out. There was only one choice. He reached into his bag, pulled out the phone again, the one connected to his real life, his real name. For a brief moment, he hesitated, because once he used it, everything would change. Then he unlocked it. This time he didn't call Marcus. He scrolled further, found another name, one he trusted, one who had been with him since the beginning. Eleanor Grant, head of legal. Adrian pressed call. It rang once. Then, Adrian. No confusion this time, just recognition, relief, and urgency. "Where are you?" she asked. "That doesn't matter," Adrian replied. "I need you to listen carefully." Something in his tone made her pause. "Okay," she said. "I need you to pull up a borrower account," Adrian continued. "Name Maya Thompson." There was a brief silence as keys clicked on the other end. "I have it," Eleanor said. Her voice changed, subtle, but serious. "What do you see?" Adrian asked. Another pause, longer this time. "Adrian," she said slowly, "this account has been flagged for escalation." "I know that," he replied. "I need details." Eleanor hesitated. Then, "The fees have compounded aggressively," she said. "There are penalty layers here that weren't part of the original structure." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Who approved that?" he asked. Silence. Then, "It's part of the new recovery model," Eleanor said carefully. "Marcus." Adrian closed his eyes briefly. "How long before action is taken?" he asked. "Today," Eleanor replied. That was it. No more time. "Freeze it," Adrian said immediately. "I can't just." Eleanor. The name alone carried weight. Years of trust. Years of authority. Another pause. Then, "I'll need a reason," she said. Adrian opened his eyes. And for the first time since this began, he stopped hiding. "Because I'm telling you to," he said. Silence. Then, "Understood," Eleanor replied quietly. The call ended. Adrian lowered the phone slowly. The line had been crossed. There was no going back now. Across the building, Maya stepped into the hallway, her bag over her shoulder, her movements slow, measured, like she was trying to stay calm. She didn't notice Adrian at first. "Maya," she turned, surprised. "Hey," she said softly. "I was just heading out." Adrian looked at the bag, then back at her. "Where are you going?" She gave a small shrug. "Figured I'd get ahead of things." Ahead of things. That's how she saw it. Not losing. Not being pushed out. Just moving forward. Adrian stepped closer. "You don't have to leave." Maya smiled faintly. "It's okay," she said. "I'll figure something out." That phrase again. But this time, it didn't sound like hope. It sounded like surrender. Adrian shook his head slightly. "No," he said. "You won't have to." Maya frowned. "What do you mean?" Adrian hesitated. Just for a second. Because this was the moment. The moment everything changed. "I made a call," he said. Maya looked confused. "A call to who?" Adrian held her gaze. And for the first time, he didn't answer as Daniel. "To the people handling your account." She blinked. "What?" "They're not going to escalate it," Adrian continued. "Not today. Not at all." Maya stared at him, trying to understand. "How would you even?" She stopped, because something didn't add up. The way he spoke, the confidence, the certainty. It didn't match the man she thought she knew. "Daniel," she said slowly. "What are you talking about?" Adrian exhaled quietly. He could feel it. The moment slipping. The truth pushing its way out. "I should have told you sooner," he said. Maya's expression shifted. "Not fully, but enough." "Told me what?" Adrian looked at her. Really looked. And in that moment, he knew there was no easy way to say it. So he didn't try to soften it. "My name isn't Daniel." Silence. Maya didn't react immediately. Took a second. Then another. "What?" Adrian's voice was steady now. "My name is Adrian Vale." The name hung in the air. Heavy. Unavoidable. Maya's expression changed instantly. Confusion. Then disbelief. Then something sharper. "No," she said quickly. "No, that's not." "It is," Adrian said. She stepped back slightly, shaking her head. "That's not funny," she said. Don't do that." "I'm not joking." The certainty in his voice stopped her. She stared at him, searching his face, looking for something, a sign, a lie, anything. But there was nothing, just truth. "You're telling me," she said slowly, "that you're—" "Yes." The word landed hard. Maya let out a small, breathless laugh. But there was no humor in it. "All this time," she said, "you've been lying to me?" Adrian shook his head. "I wasn't lying," he said. "I was pretending." She cut in. That one word hit harder than anything else. "Yes," Adrian admitted quietly. Maya looked away, her hands tightening slightly. "Why?" she asked. Adrian didn't hesitate this time. Because I needed to understand what I built, he said. She let out a slow breath. And what? I'm just part of that? She asked. Some experiment? No, Adrian said immediately. You're the reason it stopped being one. That made her pause. Just for a second. But the hurt was still there. Clear. Sharp. You could have helped me this whole time, she said. Adrian's expression tightened. I know. And you didn't. The silence that followed said everything. Why now? She asked. Adrian looked at her. Because now I understand what it's actually doing to people, he said. To you. Maya shook her head slowly. I trusted you, she said. Adrian didn't respond. Because there was nothing he could say that would fix that. Another silence. Longer this time. Then Maya spoke again. Quieter. What happens now? Adrian took a slow breath. Now, he said. I fix it. Not just for her. For everyone. Adrian Vale didn't return quietly. He returned with purpose. The next morning the city looked the same. But to Adrian, everything had changed. For 3 weeks he had walked through this world unseen. Ignored. Dismissed. Reduced to nothing more than a man trying to get by. Now, he was stepping back into the world that once answered to him. The car that picked him up didn't belong to Daniel Reed. It belonged to Adrian Vale. Black, polished, silent, waiting exactly where it should be. As he stepped inside, the door closed softly behind him. The driver didn't speak, didn't ask questions, just nodded once, and pulled away. Adrian sat back, still in the same clothes, the same worn jacket, the same scuffed shoes. He didn't change, not yet. Because he didn't want to forget. The ride was quiet, but his mind wasn't. Every moment replayed, every rejection, every humiliation, every word Maya had said. And beneath all of it, one truth stood clear. This system wasn't broken by accident. It had been shaped, refined, turned into something sharper. And now, he was going to confront it. The car pulled up in front of Vale Capital. The same building. The same glass exterior. The same guarded entrance. But this time, everything was different. The security guard stepped forward, then froze. Recognition. Instant. Mr. Vale. Adrian didn't slow down. Didn't acknowledge it. Because for the first time, he wasn't walking in as a leader. He was walking in as a witness. The doors opened, and the world he left behind came rushing back. Employees stopped. Conversations paused. Eyes followed him, some confused, some relieved, some nervous, because Adrian Vale wasn't supposed to just disappear and then return like this. Word spread fast. By the time he reached the executive floor, they were already waiting. Marcus Hale stood at the center of the boardroom, arms crossed, expression controlled. Adrian, he said. Adrian stepped inside, closed the door behind him. The room was filled with familiar faces, people he had trusted, built with, relied on. Now, they felt like strangers. You've caused quite a situation, Marcus continued. Disappearing without explanation. Adrian raised a hand slightly. Marcus stopped. I didn't come here to discuss my absence, Adrian said. His voice was calm, but different, stronger, sharper. I came to discuss what you've done in it. The room went quiet. Marcus's expression shifted slightly. I'm not sure what you're referring to, he said. Adrian stepped forward, placed a file on the table. Borrower accounts, he said. Escalation policies. Penalty structures. No one moved. I've seen them, Adrian continued. From the inside. That caught attention. What does that mean? One executive asked. Adrian looked around the room. It means I didn't spend the last 3 weeks on vacation, he said. Silence. I spent it living as one of the people we claim to help. The shift was immediate. Confusion, disbelief, discomfort. Marcus let out a short breath. Adrian, if this is some kind of statement, it's not a statement, Adrian cut in. It's reality. He paused. Let the weight of that settle. I couldn't rent a room, he said. I couldn't get a job without being dismissed. I couldn't access basic support. No one spoke. And the people who do manage to survive in that system, he continued, they're trapped in ours. Marcus shook his head slightly. This is still business, he said. Risk management. Structure. It's exploitation, Adrian said. The word landed hard. And this time, no one challenged it. Adrian turned slightly, looked directly at Marcus. You didn't just maintain the system, he said. You pushed it further. Marcus held his gaze. We adapted, he replied. That's what companies do. At what cost? Adrian asked. Marcus didn't answer, because now, the question wasn't theoretical anymore. Adrian stepped closer. There are penalty layers in place that weren't part of the original design, he said. Compounding structures that make it nearly impossible for borrowers to recover. A few executives shifted uncomfortably. That's not sustainable, Adrian continued. It's intentional. The room went still. Marcus's expression hardened slightly. You're looking at this emotionally, he said. No, Adrian replied. I'm looking at it honestly. Another pause. Then Adrian did something no one expected. He reached into his pocket, pulled out Maya's notice, and placed it on the table. This, he said, is what your system looks like from the other side. No one touched it, but everyone saw it. She took a loan to stay afloat, Adrian continued, and now she's being buried by penalties she never understood. Marcus glanced at the paper briefly. Then she shouldn't have signed, he said. The room went silent, completely, because this time, everyone heard it, and Adrian didn't look away. That's your answer? He asked quietly. Marcus didn't respond, because there was nothing left to justify. Adrian straightened slightly. Effective immediately, he said. We suspend all escalation actions on flagged accounts. A ripple moved through the room. That's not a decision you can just... Marcus began. Yes, it is, Adrian replied. The authority in his voice was unmistakable. And we review every penalty structure implemented in my absence, he continued. Every single one. Marcus stepped forward slightly. You're going to dismantle the most profitable system we've built? Adrian met his gaze. I'm going to fix the most damaging one. The two men stood there, facing each other, not as partners, but as opposites, because one had chosen profit, and the other had finally chosen people. The room remained silent, because everyone knew this wasn't just a discussion anymore. It was a turning point, and outside that building, people like Maya were still waiting. The silence in the boardroom didn't end when Adrian spoke. followed him, out of the room, down the hallway, through every pair of eyes that watched him pass. Because something had shifted, not just in policy, but in power. Within hours, the effects began to ripple. Emails were sent, instructions issued, escalation actions paused, accounts flagged for review. For the first time in a long time, the system stopped. Not completely, but enough. Inside Vale Capital, confusion spread quickly. Departments scrambled for clarity. Managers questioned decisions. Some resisted quietly, others openly, because profit had been interrupted. And that made people uncomfortable. But Adrian didn't slow down. He moved through the building with purpose. Not as the man who had left, but as someone who had returned with something to prove. By midday, he stood in front of a smaller conference room. Inside sat a group of people most executives rarely noticed. Customer support, recovery agents, the ones who spoke directly to borrowers every day. Adrian stepped in, closed the door behind him. The room fell quiet immediately. Some of them recognized him, others didn't, but all of them felt the weight of his presence. "I want to understand something," Adrian said. "No introduction, no formality. What are you instructed to say when someone calls asking for more time?" A few glances were exchanged. Then one woman spoke carefully. "We're told to walk them through the terms of their agreement," she said. "And if they can't pay?" Adrian asked. Another voice answered this time. "We escalate." "How?" The hesitation returned. "Then, we inform them of penalties," the woman said, "and the consequences of non-payment." Adrian nodded slowly. "And are you allowed to make exceptions?" Silence. That was answer enough. "Have any of you ever wanted to?" Adrian asked. That question changed the room, because this time, it wasn't about policy. It was about people. A man near the back spoke up. "Every day." The honesty in his voice cut through everything else. "But we can't," he added. "We don't have that authority." Adrian looked around the room. "And what happens when someone breaks down on the phone?" he asked. No one answered immediately. Then the same man said quietly, "We're told to stay on script." Adrian closed his eyes briefly, because that was it. That was the system. Not just policies, not just numbers, but people trained to ignore other people. When he opened his eyes again, the decision had already been made. "That changes today," he said. The room shifted. "From this point forward," Adrian continued, "any case that shows genuine hardship is to be reviewed with flexibility." A few heads lifted. "Escalations are paused until further notice," he added. "And you are no longer required to stay on script when someone is clearly struggling." The silence that followed was different, not confusion. Hope. Adrian turned and left the room without another word, because he knew this was only the beginning. Outside that building, the effects were already reaching people. Maya felt it first. Her phone buzzed while she sat in her room, staring at the same stack of bills. She almost didn't check it, but something made her pick it up. A message from Vale Capital. She froze. Slowly, she opened it. "Your account is currently under review. All escalation actions have been temporarily suspended." Maya read it again, then again. Her grip on the phone tightened slightly. "What?" she whispered. It didn't make sense. Not after everything they had told her. not after the pressure, the threats, the final notice. Now, this, her mind immediately went to one person, Adrian, the truth he had revealed, the name he had said. She shook her head slightly. No, but deep down, she knew, because nothing like this happened by accident. Across the city, Adrian stood in front of a different room, larger, more formal, and this time, cameras were present. Press, media, because this wasn't staying inside the company. Not anymore. Adrian stepped up to the podium. The room quieted instantly. Everyone knew who he was, but no one knew what he was about to say. Adrian looked out at the crowd, and for a moment, he saw two worlds at once. The one in front of him, polished, controlled, curious, and the one behind his eyes, the diner, the streets. Maya. He took a slow breath. 3 weeks ago, he began, I walked away from this company without explanation. A ripple moved through the room. Today, he continued, I'm here to explain why. The cameras focused. I wanted to understand the real impact of what we do, Adrian said. Not the reports, not the numbers, the reality. So I removed everything that made me who I am in this world, he said. No money, no name, no access. The room grew still, and I lived as one of the people we claim to serve. Silence, complete. What I found, Adrian continued, was not a system designed to help. A pause. It was a system designed to keep people trapped. The words landed, hard, and this time, they couldn't be dismissed. Effective immediately, Adrian said, we are suspending all aggressive recovery practices and conducting a full internal review. The room erupted. Questions, voices, reactions. But Adrian didn't stop. Because no system, he said firmly, should profit from the desperation of the people it claims to support. That was the moment everything changed. Because now, the truth wasn't hidden. It wasn't internal. It was public. And there was no controlling what came next. Back in her room, Maya sat in silence, her phone still in her hand. The message, Adrian's words, everything colliding at once. The man she thought she knew, and the man he truly was. She didn't know what to feel. Relief, anger, confusion. But one thing was clear. Nothing was the same anymore. And somewhere in the city, Adrian Vale stood in the middle of it all. No longer hiding, no longer observing, but finally, taking responsibility. The fallout was immediate, and it was everywhere. News spread faster than anyone inside Vale Capital could control. Clips of Adrian's statement flooded social media. Headlines followed within hours. Billionaire CEO admits system exploits the poor. Vale Capital under fire after shocking internal reveal. Adrian Vale disappears, returns with damning truth. Inside the company, tension reached a breaking point. Phones rang constantly. Partners demanded explanations. Investors grew uneasy. And at the center of it all, Marcus Hale stood very still. The boardroom that once echoed with confidence now felt different. Quieter, colder. Marcus looked around the table, at faces that no longer looked certain, at people who were no longer aligned. Say something, one board member finally said. Marcus didn't respond immediately, because for the first time, he didn't have control of the narrative. What exactly did you implement while Adrian was gone? Another voice pressed. Marcus exhaled slowly. We optimized the system, he said. That's not what this looks like, the first member replied. No one defended him. And that said everything, because profit had always been the priority. But now, the spotlight had shifted, and under that light, the decisions didn't look the same anymore. Across the building, Adrian stood by the window in his office. The same view, but this time, he didn't feel disconnected. He felt accountable. Every call, every reaction, every consequence. This was what responsibility looked like. A knock came at the door. Come in, Adrian said. Eleanor stepped inside, professional as always, but her expression carried something new. It's escalating, she said. Adrian nodded. I expected that. She placed a folder on his desk. Internal review findings, she said. Adrian opened it. His eyes scanned the pages, faster this time, because he already knew what he would find. Policy adjustments, penalty increases, aggressive escalation triggers. All approved, all signed off, all under Marcus. Adrian closed the folder slowly. How far does it go? He asked. Eleanor hesitated. Further than you'd want it to, she said. Adrian looked up. Then we deal with it, he replied. There was no hesitation now, no doubt, because the truth had already come out. Now, there was only one direction left. Forward. Across town, Maya stood outside the diner. Watching. People moved as usual. Cars passed. Life continued. But for her, nothing felt normal. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. Updated notice. Your account is under active review. No further action will be taken at this time. She stared at it. The pressure that had been building for weeks, suddenly gone. Just like that. It should have felt like relief. But it didn't. Not completely. Because now, she knew why. And that made it complicated. Hey! She turned. Adrian stood a few steps away. Not Daniel. Not anymore. Adrian Vale. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Because there was too much between them now. Too much truth. Too much history. Too much that had changed. You didn't have to do all this, Maya said finally. Her voice wasn't angry, but it wasn't soft either. Adrian stepped closer. I did, he said. She shook her head slightly. You could have helped me from the beginning. There it was. The part he couldn't escape. I know, Adrian said. And you didn't. Silence. Because there was no defense for that. I needed to understand what was really happening, Adrian said quietly. Maya looked at him. And I needed help, she replied. The words landed. Heavy. Final. Adrian didn't look away. Because this was the cost. Not just of the system, but of his choices. I'm sorry, he said. Not as a CEO. Not as a billionaire. But as a man who had seen too late. Maya studied him, trying to reconcile two versions of the same person. The one who stood beside her, listened to her, helped her, and the one who built the system that hurt her. You really lived like that? She asked. Adrian nodded. Why? He didn't hesitate. Because I stopped trusting what I was being told, he said. And I needed to see it for myself. Maya looked away briefly. And now you have, she said. Yes. Another silence. But this one felt different. less sharp, less distant, not resolved, but shifting. "I don't know what to do with this," Maya admitted. Adrian nodded slowly. "You don't have to decide anything right now," he said. She looked back at him. "And you?" she asked. Adrian's expression steadied. "I fix it," he said. "Not just her situation. Everything. Because now," he understood the damage. And understanding came with responsibility. Across the city, the consequences continued to unfold. Investigations began. Partners distanced themselves. Internal reviews expanded. And Marcus Hale was no longer in control, because the system he had pushed forward was now being pulled apart, piece by piece, under the weight of truth. Back outside the diner, Maya exhaled slowly. The tension in her shoulders eased. Just slightly, not because everything was fixed, but because something had changed. For the first time in a long time, the system wasn't pushing against her. It was finally being questioned. She looked at Adrian again, still unsure, still conflicted, but no longer unaware. And that was the beginning of something different. The weeks that followed didn't bring silence. They brought consequences. Vale Capital was no longer just a company. It was a story, a headline, a question the public wouldn't stop asking. How many people had been trapped before someone finally spoke up? Investigations moved quickly, faster than anyone expected. Regulators stepped in. Auditors dug deeper. Files were reopened. Decisions re-examined. And the truth didn't hide. Every layer uncovered revealed another. Penalty structures designed to multiply. Policies written to protect profit, not people. Systems that looked fair on paper, but felt impossible in reality. At the center of it all, Marcus Hale. He sat across from a panel of investigators, his usual confidence replaced by something quieter, measured, careful. "These were strategic adjustments," he said, "market-aligned decisions." But this time, the words didn't hold, because now there was evidence, patterns, approvals, timelines, and more importantly, there were voices, people who had lived through it, who had called, begged, explained, and been turned away. The same scripts, the same responses, the same outcome. Marcus's decisions were no longer protected by distance. They were exposed. And for the first time, accountability wasn't optional. Back at Vale Capital, the building felt different, quieter, not because business had stopped, but because the culture had shifted. Departments that once moved without question now paused, reviewed, reconsidered. Conversations changed. Is this fair? Is this necessary? Who does this affect? Questions that had once been ignored were now at the center of every decision. And Adrian Vale stood in the middle of it all, not above it, within it, because this time, he wasn't leading from distance. He was rebuilding from truth. Policies were rewritten, penalty structures removed, escalation processes redesigned. Support teams were given authority, not just to enforce rules, but to help people. For the first time, flexibility wasn't an exception. It became the standard. Across the city, people began to feel it. Calls were different. Conversations changed. Where there had once been pressure, there was now space. Not perfect, not immediate, but real. And for many, That was enough to breathe again. Maya felt it too. Not just in the messages, not just in the absence of pressure, but in something deeper. Relief, the kind that doesn't come all at once, but slowly, as the weight begins to lift. She sat in her room one evening, looking at the same table that had once been covered in bills. Now, it was clear, not because everything was gone, but because everything had changed. Her phone buzzed. Another message. Final update. Your account has been restructured under new terms. No further penalties applied. Maya stared at the screen, then let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding for weeks. Across the city, Adrian stood outside the diner, the same place where everything had started. But this time, he wasn't watching from the outside. He stepped in. The bell above the door rang softly. Maya looked up. For a moment, felt like nothing had changed. Then everything came back. The truth, the distance, the weight of everything between them. Adrian walked over slowly. I wanted to see how you were doing, he said. Maya studied him. Not with anger this time, not with confusion, but with something more grounded. I'm okay, she said, and this time, she meant it. A small silence followed. Then she added, they changed everything. Adrian nodded. They're still changing it, he said. Maya looked at him. You really did it, she said. Adrian shook his head slightly. No, he replied. This should have been done a long time ago. Another pause. But this one was lighter. Not empty. Just honest. I was angry at you, Maya said. Adrian nodded. I know. I didn't understand why you waited, she continued. He didn't interrupt. But now, she said slowly, I see it differently. Adrian looked at her. How? Maya took a breath. You didn't just fix my situation, she said. You changed it for everyone. The words settled between them, because that was the difference. This wasn't just about one person anymore. It never really was. Adrian nodded slowly. I had to make it right, he said. Maya studied him for a moment. Then, are you going to disappear again? She asked. A small smile touched Adrian's face. No, and for the first time since everything began, felt like the truth. Outside, the city moved as it always had. Busy, unpredictable, unfair at times. But now, just a little different, because somewhere within it, a system had been challenged and changed. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough. Enough to remind people that power could be questioned, that systems could be rebuilt, that justice could still exist. Adrian stepped back toward the door, then paused. Thank you, he said. Maya frowned slightly. For what? For showing me the truth, Adrian replied. She didn't respond immediately, then gave a small nod. Because sometimes, the biggest changes don't come from power. They come from people who simply refuse to give up. The bell rang softly as Adrian stepped outside. And this time, he didn't look at the city from above. He walked through it, understanding it, part of it, because the man who once had everything had finally learned what mattered most. And that's how a man who once had everything finally understood what truly mattered. From power to pain, from ignorance to truth, and from profit to justice, Adrian Vale didn't just change his life, he changed the lives of many. If the story moved you, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and share it with someone who needs to see this. Stories like this remind us that kindness matters and that real change is always possible. I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below. What would you have done if you were in Adrian's position? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.